You've seen this in the old Wright balance literature. And this was from the original biomechanics lab study in Dr. Job's lab at Centinela Hospital in the early 2000s. And you can see that on the mat, we always had a line when we were doing static measurements. We had 40 light sensors on the body, light sensors on the pole, to validate the use of the bars you're using now. We had, I'm not going to go into the details. You've seen most of it, but I want to give you a view of what we were looking at in those days was the downswing, backswing path primarily. So when we saw this configuration, and what you're seeing is what we called in those days line of force. It's now called line of pressure. I still refer to it as line of force, but this line right here. And that line pretty much gave us the backswing path. And with the putter, the majority of players who set up, we saw that path. However, we may see this path in the backswing, but we weren't seeing it in the downswing. And some players, this would be an inside-out swing, but this could be the path we might see in the downswing, and that's an over-the-top, outside-in path. So you'll see all of this again. I'm going to show you now. So what I have set up on this mat a line. So if you could just give me an okay, is this? Everybody see my hips here okay? Somebody could let me know.
Yes, we can see them.
Okay. So I have done the Right Balance Express. I've done it in the mid-core. So looking at the mid-core, what I'd like for you to do when you look at the body, you're going to have, if you would please stand up. So we look from, say, the thoracic spine up. We're looking at arms, hands, fingers. And from the pelvis down, we're looking at the joints. They're referred to as the kinetic chain. So from the pelvis down, toes, ankles, knees, it involves the joints. It also involves muscles, tendons, fascia. But the joints are what we're really focused on. It's called the lower kinetic chain. And the upper kinetic chain of the arms, fingers, hands, neck, shoulders, wrist, all of that's the upper kinetic chain. So what I'd like for you to do is, if you are set, if you're not set, if you've done the Right Balance Express, you can follow me along with this. And what you need really to test what I'm going to show you is a square hip line, as I have now. So for me, the easiest thing for you to do to test is assume a baseball posture. Okay, get your grip. And now as I stand tall, you'll notice that my hips remain square. Important concept. However, if I grip here, I'm setting the upper kinetic chain, my upper body, before I set the lower, and then I get set. My hips are square here, but when I stand tall and I look at my downswing path, you can tell that ball is going down the third baseline. Cricket, I know if you're in Europe and you're watching this, it's going to be different, but you still have a bat. Softball, baseball, it's all the same. To give you a view, and we are going to get to golf here, by the way. To give you a view with a bat, here I am with a bat. Okay, I find my stance, I get set, and I look down and my hips are absolutely square. However, if I get my grip here and set up, I've set the upper kinetic chain before the lower. My hips look square. When I drop this back to my shoulder, look where my downswing path is going. Again, it's going to go left. Now, so those of you who are watching because of the Justin Rose and Billy Herschel comments, it's exactly the same thing. So you can test, I have here, if you don't have them, we haven't covered grip. So if you're new to right balance, I have the big clip on, this is a trainer grip, and that clip is going right, that card is going right down the middle of that grip. So the Billy Herschel and Justin Rose issue, if you watch them in their routines, they got the grip before they ever set to the ball. So it's an easy test. So here I am. I'm mid-core as is Justin Rose. And I start everything back together. I can feel a restriction in my shoulder rotation. If I simply come back after going to the top, you can see my hips are open. So my miss, everybody knows their miss. My miss is steep. It's going left or it's going to be blocked right. And it's going to generally be heavy. That's going to be my miss. However, if I go into this and I have to assume my posture, I get my grip, and the same motion, everything back together, I can feel much greater shoulder rotation, and I come back and everything's good. There's my downswing path. So downswing path becomes predictable, and there are numerous variables that are going to affect this downswing path. I want to show you what a few of those are now. So if you have tape on your finger, you're going to put it on the index finger, say, of one hand, and on your power spot. Now you can see I have my power spots marked on both my right and my left hand. Now I've moved to a mid-core just for the demonstration. Normally I'm low core. I'm going to show you what that means in a bit. But my sequencing of motion. So if I get set, no club, my sequencing of motion for mid-core is everything rotating back together. So I get set, and everything goes back together, very centered. I come back, just relax. You can start the downswing. Obviously, you're not going to go to the through swing, and you can see where I am. I'm absolutely square as a mid-core. If you're upper core, you're going to start with a trail hip. If you're low core, I'll show you myself in a little bit. I'm going to start with the shoulder rotation back. Now, what happens if I get in my posture and I start like a upper core player? I start back with the trail hip, rotation, come back, see my hips just are wide open. So what you want to do, raise my foot. This is called a closed kinetic chain, by the way. So as soon as I add both hands, that closed kinetic chain is connected. So now arms across my shoulders, and I'm going to start with the lower core sequencing of motion. So I'm going to start with my shoulder rotation. And I come back, I'll just stop at the top, and you'll notice where my hips are before I start my downswing. So I'm getting changes in the lower body, lower core, and I'm getting changes in the upper. Watch what happens now from behind. So I'm going to get set. You'll notice as I get set here, my trail hip is lower, which is really where what we want in the full swing. So my trail hip is lower, and I get set. I come back, my hips are square, and notice my trail hip is still lower. Okay, now I'm going to start back with a bad sequence of motion. Doesn't matter what I do wrong. Get my grip. Start back with my shoulders. Now, not only do my hips open, but look at my trail hip. So at impact, my trail hip rises. my lead shoulder lowers, and I am set for a very steep angle of approach. So many things are going to happen, but it's pretty simple now to determine downswing and predict the changes. All right. We talked in the last section about the complementary versus the butterfly grip. So this is a butterfly grip, okay, where hands cross. This is what it looks like. What I'm doing is getting a flat left wrist. This card tells me that that club face is square. My power spots are set. Okay, there's my butterfly grip. Everything back together. Stand tall, and I'm good. Okay. This is a complementary grip where the hands line up palms, everything opposing palms. And you'll notice what that does. It brings this trail arm in a good bit. My hips are still square. I'll show you this down the line here in a moment. And I swing to the top, and my hips go wide open. Here I am with the complementary grip. And complementary grip's not going to work for me. So I'm going to raise one foot, left hand still on. I'm going to get that butterfly grip. Everything back together. I see a square club face at the top, and my hips remain square. So those are just a few of the factors. Power spots. As you saw, I have the power spots marked. I now have been gripping on that black mark on both hands. That black mark is on the first knuckle up. And I've got it in the left hand correctly, but I'm going to have the wrong power spot on my trail hand, on my right hand here. Notice that my hips are still square. And with the power spots not set, you can do it in both hands or one hand, and that's going to be my downswing path. That path is going steep, it's going left or blocked right. Now everyone knows their mitts, and you'll have players that when they get set, take it to the top, their miss is thin and they feel stuck through the bottom with a very handsy swing. They've got a closed hip line. All right, putter. Putter. Now, we haven't gotten a grip in a full swing. We haven't gotten a putter grip. But to give you an idea how I'm gripping this putter, it's a continuation of my forearm here. Okay, on both sides, both my left and right. That basically places that putter right through the middle of my palm. So that's the first thing. The next thing is the power spots. So I'm in mid-core. I'm going to ground the putter. Tell you what, let me back up and you can perhaps see the path down this mat line. Okay, so I'm set. I've taken my right hand off. Replace it. Okay. I take it to the backstroke and there's my hips. Okay. If on the other hand I get my grip, I'm setting the upper body before the lower, the upper kinetic chain before the lower, and I go down to the ball and I get my grip, make a stroke, hold it, look where my hips have gone. So I've engaged the upper core before the lower. Upper kinetic chain before the lower. Let me show you that again. I get my grip. When I get into my setup, make a stroke back and I hold it, my hips are wide open. That path is going to cut across the ball. And I'm going to put cut spin on the ball and through. Now, we have if you've been with right balance for a while, you know, for example, that in teaching posture, the angles, the carrying angle is absolutely critical in posture. So in teaching posture, you can still do everything we've done. Okay, I get the grip here. I have my shaft lean set. And as a mid-core player, that shaft should be parallel to the ground, by the way. As a mid-core player, I simply ground everything. And if I take my trail hand off and then reset it, I've just disconnected the upper and lower kinetic chains, and now I'm good to go. Let me move down so I can make a backswing here, and you'll see. So if I get set here, and everything back, then I take my right hand off, I reset it, everything back together, and my hips are squared. If I do not take that right hand off, and I'm standing tall, notice that I have my grip standing tall. I go into my posture, start to club back, I feel the shoulder restriction already, and my hips are open. So what that means is that I have to set posture, I have to set everything. And either remove one hand or get my grip here. And you'll see a lot of tour players get into their setup and they get their grip once everything is set. It's just part of their routine. Don't think they know why. I'll show you one more thing now. When I discovered how to eliminate hip rotation, eliminate the lower body in the setup, I thought it was the Holy Grail. And the reason I did was, if I get set here, you'll see how strong this left hand is. No matter what I do, that club face remains square. I can go very weak, I can go very strong, okay? And I believed that, okay, that's awesome. So we're not going to get face rotation through. However, if I get set and I swing to the top, and I add my trail hand now, you'll notice I have shaft lean, everything is set, hips are square, everything back together, and I stand tall, my hips are square, and I still have that. I can have whatever grip I want, but not to keep the hips square, by the way. However, once I get a very strong lead hand, let's do it. Let's tell you what. This is new for me too. I'm going to start with that very strong grip. A bad grip for me. My hips remain square. So everything back together. Yeah, my hips are open. And also look what happens. Now that club face is going to rotate through. And as that club face turns, everything. Hook, for me, with a closed hip line, you'll see, unless it's a very strong grip. Which brings me to the point of when you're working with students and they come out, the first thing I would check, I wouldn't give them anything. I would just have them swing to the top, check their hip line and say, okay, where's your miss? Where's your miss? You should be able to see their miss. Once they swing to the top, no instruction whatsoever, you should be able to predict their miss, at least from that setup. The other thing that may be happening is they have built-in compensations, and the changes you make are going to eliminate those compensations, and they may struggle a bit. With this understanding the downswing plane as a function of being able to test from the top is our latest, and I think it's a pretty significant breakthrough. So let me make sure I've Oh, what I want to do now is I'm going to disrupt my core and show you a couple of things as related to low core, because I am low core. So to disrupt my core, these are my 3 grip sizes. This is my upper, that's my mid, and that's my lower. Your students, when you fit them, are only going to use one unless they become interested in a fitness program where they would use all 3. But your students are only going to be using one. And so I'm going to go to a black number and use my red grip size. So you'll notice, by the way, how square I stay in all stance width and all planes of motion. You can see how square I am. You can see if I grip this bat down here, I stay square. If I grip this bat up here, I stay square. So I can use any handle size I want. So I'm going to go to a black number, with red handle size and do 1 express. And as I do this, you can see I can feel my hips rotate right now. Okay, and I've disrupted my core. And you can see if no matter where I go, take a step forward, back, pelvic rotation is with me. So to eliminate that, I'm going to place tape on an index finger. Now I already know I'm mid-core. And our next session will be August 12th. We're going to cover all the measurements. We're going to cover this again. So I'm going to go through it. I know I'm low core. And because I'm low core, that fingertip, I'm going to put this piece of tape around my lower core power spot. As you can see there. And I always fold the end over. If you fold the end over when you're doing this testing, it's easy to get the tape off. Now, you'll notice, no matter where I go, my hips remain square. However, if I grip this bat on the lower end, I have to go all the way up to my lower core grip size before my hips will square up. So if I grip the bat here, or I grip the bat here, I cannot play, for example, here are the clubs that I use now. I can't play with this handle size. This is the handle size that I used in years past, and this is why. And you'll notice how square my hips stay. And this is a what was called jumbo. It's now oversized. I think there's 7 or 8 extra wraps under that. I've been playing as a low core. So your low core player obviously will always have a larger handle size. Your upper core, and you'll always see red, which is upper, black, which is mid, and blue, which is lower. They always go in that order. Red, black, and then blue at the top. So let's take a look now at separation. Remember, I was set in mid. So I'm going to go to a little wider base. I'm going to turn everything back together. And that no longer fits. And everything back together only works in the mid core. I'll raise 1 foot here, get back to square. Now I'm set in a lower core. Lower core starts back with the shoulders. Back to the time, I'm gonna be a bit off the trail side. I stand tall and my hips remain square. So your sequencing of motion has to be set by core zone. This simply validates the upper core zone, mid-core zone, lower core zone for sequences of motion, for power spots, for all of our setup positions, how we set our posture, your grip, all of those factors go into your downswing plane. So, okay, I believe you can turn your mics on, and I'm happy to answer any questions, or let's have some discussion. Any questions?
Yes, Doc, I've got a question regarding the putter grip. Do you have to grip the putter differently as per the different core zones or your predominant core zone? So a lower core player would grip it differently from a upper core player.
Good morning, Spence. Spence is from England. Thank you for joining us, Spence. To answer your question, the only thing you need to be concerned about is that power spot. So if I'm upper core, that power spot has to be on the underside. Okay? On both sides. Now, if you have the power spot correct, so if I set up here, I have an upper core power spot now. Let me put this back on and I'll show you what happens. But the only thing you really need to be concerned about is that power spot first. So if the power spot is set correctly, and mine is not. I'm in the low core now, and and you can see my hips already want to rotate. Okay. So I'm not going to be able to demonstrate that, but I'm going to go to low core power spot. Okay. So notice what just happened to my hips. I'm in the lower core power spot. And don't worry about the grip size on this putter because my hips are pretty darn square. So with a lower core power spot, I had the right hand now, take it off, reset it, and I make a stroke. My hips remain pretty square. Okay. If, on the other hand, I'm going to leave the power spot, but I'm going to get the grip a little off. I'm going to put the grip more into the palm and rather than more on the heel pad, I should say, rather than the palm. And that just changed everything, and my hips just opened. So check the power spot first. But to answer your question, Spence, the only concern you have really are the power spots first, and then you can check to see how the hands are placed on the club. You'll find players, I've seen tour players who grip more in the fingers with a putter. Still check it. If the putter is fine, I wouldn't mess with it. But you're going to have the power spot set. If the grip, some of the larger grips, since KJ Choi won many years ago, and won with that huge grip, went to the PGA show the next year, and there were 3 or 4 booths before they became so popular. This was the size of the putter grips in those days. Your handle size, I do have handle size that fit my grip size, but if you get too big, especially for an upper core player, to be able to get that upper core power spot on the underside is very difficult. So handle size makes a difference, in particular with putter. Thanks, Spence. Anything else?
Yes, thanks for that, Doc. Just one more question.
Sure.
It's regarding taping of a nail in a normal swing. So for normal exercise, say you're running or cycling, you advocated putting a tape on a nail, either on the foot or on the finger, on both feet or both hands. And then when you're playing golf, you just put one nail on the lead, toenail or lead hand. Do you still advocate that?
No. Thanks for asking that question, Spence. As all of you know, right balance evolves. I am going to cover how to do the right balance express a couple of sessions out because the details of that have changed a bit. But Spence, if you can see the size, this is what, 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So to do the right, you're talking about doing the right balance express, is that correct?
Yeah, so once I've done the right balance express, so if I was going to do exercise, go for a run or bike ride or something, I would then subsequently tape two fingernails up, one on each
You don't
hand.
have to anymore.
Okay.
Okay. And I want to tape, you want to put tape on all three power spots on each hand, as I'm doing here.
Okay.
Okay. And then you're going to do, then you'll do the right balance express. Now, when you do the right balance express, it has to be on all 5 subregions. On all 5 subregions. Now I'm ready to do the right balance express. I've just done it on my little finger because this just happens to cover all the way up. You don't want to cover this pad, but it covers all 3 power spots on both hands. If you take a piece of tape like this, it would work on my index, not as well on my middle. It works great on my little finger. So there's nothing to what finger, but you do want to cover all 3. You do the right balance express, you take these off and you're good to go. You don't need to wear any tape on your hands then during play. If you're working out, and we will get to that in months ahead, yes, you want to leave this on during the workouts. So I will go into this in much more detail and why. Just to give you a broad answer, the reason you tape all 3 is that each of the 5 stance widths within a core zone, each of those has 3 subregions. So if you don't add tape, you're only getting to one of those 3 subregions. So you have 3 sub. So yeah, actually, we're only exercising in 5 stance widths for the core zone, but we're getting 15 subregions total. It's a simple way to demonstrate when I'm going through the exercise, I can show you, but please just know for now, you cover all 3, then you can take it off when you're done and go play or practice. It covers the core really well. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay, Spence. Please don't apologize.
Okay, yeah. So just based on what you showed us there with the tape, you said you must ensure you don't cover the tip of the finger and the fingernail. So I've been using finger sleeves. So you're saying I shouldn't use finger sleeves anymore, just use a tape on the power spots.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, you can cut the top off that finger sleeve and use it if it's
Yeah.
covering the entire finger.
Okay.
Yeah, you just, I know if I'm understanding the finger sleeve you have, because we've used them, they literally cover the finger. So if you just cut the top, you can still use it, as long as
Okay.
it has enough pressure.
Roger that.
Okay?
Yeah,
Hey,
thanks,
Doc,
Doc.
I got one. Oh, sorry. Someone else is talking, but I got one question about taking the right hand off in the dress. Could you go over that one more time? So
Sure. Sure.
your routine should be to bend with the shaft parallel with shaft lean. For lower core like I am, I bend at my knees and then I bring the club down. And then before I swing, take my right hand off and put it back on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And what that does, as you saw when I was showing what Justin Rose and Billy Horschel do, they get their grip. Justin Rose, if you saw, was even looking like he's making a move to squat like Sam Snead. I believe probably working on trying to feel a shallowing of the club. But they were engaging the upper core before the lower. So it's not just when you grip, but it is obviously when you grip, but it's getting into your setup. So if they did all of this, they got into their setup, and then they took one hand off, they'd be fine. because now they've set a closed kinetic chain from the top, and they've engaged the lower kinetic chain. Take it off, I've disengaged. Now I can re-engage by adding that right hand, adding the trail hand, and you're good to go.
Okay.
And Jim, if you get anything other than that, please let me know.
Okay. Yeah.
Because what we have set up in teaching is we have you standing tall, holding that shaft, and you want to make sure that when you're doing this, you have shaft lean, that your setup is consistent with whatever core zone. So setting from here for me as a lower core player, then I'm going to go down, and arms are going to stay connected to the chest one. Then you're going to take that right hand off and you're good to go.
Okay. Thank you, Doc.
My pleasure. Anybody else?
Yeah, I've got one more. Sorry.
It's okay. Vince, when's the I haven't had a chance to talk to you ever, have I?
Well, no, we spoke. We did. We spoke in. I was working. I was working over in New Mexico, and I drove to Arizona, and I met up with the French lady, and we spoke on the
Anne-Marie.
phone. Anne-Marie,
Yeah.
that's right. Yes. So what it is? So I'm a lower core as well. But just
Okay.
a question regarding the driver. So obviously with the lower core, you have quite a significant amount of forward shaft lean. And when I set up a address with that shaft lean, the club head is significantly behind the ball, like a good 3 or 4 inches because there's so much shaft lean. Do you experience the same thing?
Yeah. Okay. Let me show you what you're going to do. What we didn't talk about was the side tilt, side bend. So here I am. That is my lower core shell. That club head is on the outside of my trail arm here. That's what you're seeing too when you have proper shaft lean. So I go in. Notice that if I allow the lead hip and the trail shoulder to drop, if I go down straight down, yeah, that ball is way back. But if I just comfortably go down, are you able to see that okay?
Yes, yeah, you got some axis tilt there, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So all I've done is add a little side bend on the way down. I don't want to exaggerate. It should be very natural. Jim, are you feeling that? Are you doing that?
Yeah, I feel that sometimes too, but I haven't been letting my right shoulder drop low enough now that I see that.
Yeah.
I think that was a very good question.
Yeah, great question. Yeah. Because your upper core player is not going to have much side bend, nor is the mid core is going to have a little. But you will find, you'll see and feel a difference in, well, your ball position is not going to feel so foreign to you. It'll be more centered, if not a little bit center back. And your ability to rotate and separate. The other thing with the lower core, please remember, your stance width is very important. If I'm low core and I have a narrow stance width, everything is going to tend to want to work together. Meaning, I'm going to tend to swing more like a mid core. But if I get a good wide base and I get set, now my ability to rotate here, starting with the shoulders, my lower body has not moved, which is really the sequencing of motion. So yeah, you want a very wide base also. Make sure you have that. A putter, no, you're not, obviously a lower core does not become involved ideally with a putter. But with the driver, any iron.
Okay, thanks for that. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. Any other questions, comments?
Not for me.
Do we have any other questions or comments before we close? You should get a copy of this in the next 48 hours. I'm sorry, George will put it on the closed Facebook page in the next 48 hours. George Paczynski handles all of that. He's set up a closed Facebook page where you'll get everything first there. So this will probably be up in 48 hours with a quiz. So thank you for joining us this morning, joining me, and you guys have a wonderful day.